What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is my top 10 movies that I used to love, but now hate. There was a video that I did nearly a year ago where it was top 10 movies I used to hate but now love, and that video was a lot easier to do than this video that I'm filming today. Reason being is just because, for me personally, the way I am, there are a lot more times where I can say, hey, I saw a movie, wasn't a big fan of it, but then I revisited a couple years later and it was like, oh wow, I actually really liked that. And it ended up becoming like a favorite. It's usually not the opposite. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh, Grand Budapest Hotel, it's one of my favorites. It's not like, oh, one year I watched it, I'm like, now I hate that movie. It just usually doesn't work like that for me personally, which is why it took me nearly a year to film this video of top 10 movies I used to love, but now hate. And that's why I'm getting it out to you guys this late. So I apologize, but it just very difficult for me to do this kind of video. But anyways, I'll be going from 10 to 1, with my number 1 being the movie that I deem personally the one that I used to love the most, but I ended up hating the most at this point in time. So guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off, we have number 10, which is Forrest Gump. Now look, I know some of you that grew up with me in high school might be like, wait, but you didn't like it in high school. It wasn't that I didn't like it in high school. I thought it was solid in high school, and I did like it per se, but there were some issues that I still had with it. It wasn't until I revisited it when I realized that, hey, I actually hate this movie. Like, there is a lot wrong with it. Like, don't get me wrong, the score is really good, and it is pretty well shot, and Tom Hanks is good, but there are a lot of things, such as the romance, the ending, that just really bugs me. The pacing, even the humor, just a lot of times really kind of just rubbed me the wrong way. So yeah, this went from like a solid movie to like a pretty big disappointment that I'm really not a fan of at this point in time. So yeah, that's why Forrest Gump is my number 10. And I know right there, that is going to get some people to click off this video. I get it. But anyways, guys, next up, my number 9 is Courageous. So Courageous is an Alex Kendrick movie. This is a Sherwood Pictures movie. It's a Christian company. I grew up in a very religious household, so I saw a lot of Christian movies, and I do remember seeing Courageous in theaters and quite liking it, and seeing it, like, I think once or twice more on like DVD with like my family and whatnot, and I remember liking it. It wasn't until I decided that I wanted to rank Alex Kendrick's work on my YouTube channel that I said, you know what, let me revisit his work. And so I did, and one of them was Courageous, and I revisited, and I was like, this is bad. This is not good, like, at all. It's well-meaning, but at the same time, it's very surface-based, and it's very preachy, which, if you're one that is the choir, then preaching to the choir might work for you as an individual, but for me, and a lot of other people that are looking at like the filmmaking and how they execute certain things, it's not going to work for those individuals. And yeah, Courageous, it does not hold up. Nearly a decade later when I watched it, yeah, not good in the slightest. And that's why it's my number 9. Next up, my number 8, we have The Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. This was a movie I saw in theaters with one of my best friends and my mom. And at the time when I saw it, I liked it, but even then I knew that I liked it a lot less than the other 2 entries. And each passing year, I can't lie, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that was not a good movie in the slightest. Like, you could definitely see the studio changes and the different directing, and just also the certain characters not being there. A lot of filmmaking of this film also just does not work at all. I'm not a big fan of this movie in the slightest now. Like, it just, retrospectively, I'm like, that is not good. There's a reason why it ended that franchise, I must say. Yeah, it's bad. That's why it's my number 8. Next up, I took a pause because this I know is going to hurt a lot of people. But my number 7 is Space Jam. So Space Jam I saw with my cousin when I was like 14, and I remember dying. I was laughing a lot with that movie. I had such a great time watching it. I'll never forget that memory. But I revisited it a second time in preparation for Space Jam 2, and holy cow. Watching it as an adult, holy cow, it is not good at all. It's bad. It's really bad. That's the thing too. Like, maybe it's because, after Space Jam, after seeing it like as a 14-year-old, like years later I saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which truthfully I think is just a solid film. But even so, after watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you can't help but think about Space Jam. You're like, wow, Space Jam, I'm pretty sure it came out after Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and that's the best that they could do. Holy cow. Like, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is so good. Space Jam, the acting, the directing, the pacing, it's not good. Now, don't get me wrong. Space Jam is better than the sequel, for sure. But I personally do not like it. I do not have any nostalgia towards it. I have that fond memory of watching it that first time, and that is it. Anyways, next up, my number 6. This is Justice League. So Justice League, I saw in theaters in 2017. I was very excited for it, just because I grew up watching the animated TV show. So I couldn't help but think about that show while watching the movie. And I think that that's kind of what blinded me to the fact that this is a absolutely terrible movie. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Like, a 3.5 out of 5 is pretty decent for a movie that, when I watched a second time in preparation for the Zack Snyder cut, I couldn't believe I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I gave it a 1.5 out of 5 upon rewatch. I was just like, wow, this is bad. Like, terrible CGI, terrible plotting, terrible pacing. The humor just really doesn't work. There's just a lot of cringe-inducing scenes. I can't believe that I liked this movie. But again, I think that I was kind of in denial. But yeah, Justice League. That's why it's my number 6. Next up, my number 5 is Taken 2, which I actually saw twice in theaters. And I gotta say this. When I saw Taken 2 the first time, I really liked it. I gave it like a 4 out of 5 star rating. However, in between the first viewing and the second viewing, I saw a movie called Skyfall. And Skyfall is a movie that changed me forever, I would say, in terms of how I viewed action films. And so when I watched it a second time, Taken 2, I should say, I just noticed all of the things that the first time I think mentally just wasn't really aware of those things not being good in terms of action filmmaking, such as like the overusage of shaky camera work, the over-edited sequences, the lazy attempts at exposition, just terribleness. Also, the other thing is that when I saw Skyfall, I was like, oh my goodness, like these are some of the same set pieces, but Skyfall has this, smooth cinematography where you can actually tell what's going on and everything. Amazing stuff. But again, this isn't about Skyfall. It's just about how Skyfall kind of changed me. And so when I saw Taken 2 a second time, I was like, oh no, this is not good at all. But I still managed to watch it a third time. I think because I said to myself, maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset when I watched it a second time. But no, when I saw Taken 2 a third time, that was when I was like, yep, that is it. This is not a good movie at all. Yeah, Taken should have just been one movie. Let's just leave it at that. And that's why Taken 2 is my number 5. Next up, my number 4 is The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. So this is yet another movie that I saw twice in 2012. The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, I liked the first time I saw it. It was a very fun experience that I had. And truthfully, it went by pretty fast. However, I saw it a second time, and when I saw it a second time in theaters, it was, I saw it in HFR, so instead of like 24 frames per second, it was, I believe, 60 frames per second, and it was also in 3D. I had a headache after watching the movie. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'll never forget that experience, but it wasn't even just that I had a headache from, the 3D and then, the high frame rate. It was the fact that I had a headache from just the pacing issue with that movie. The cringe-inducing humor, Radagast, the visual effects, just a lot of things that I don't know. I guess just second viewing, that's when I started to actually notice it, and I didn't have those rose-tinted glasses, or just happiness of being back in Middle Earth. It was just like, this is not good. I haven't revisited it since then, so it's been like 11 years since I saw it a second time, but I don't want to watch it again. Maybe I will, because I know my wife does want to watch the Hobbit movies again, but I feel like even if I were to watch the Hobbit movies again, specifically the first one, I'm still not going to like it. In fact, I'm probably hate it even more. But yeah, I really hated the Hobbit: Unexpected Journey, the second viewing. Holy cow. But yeah, that's my number 4. Next up, my number 3 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yes, that's right. When I saw it in theaters, I quite liked it. In fact, I was looking back at texts from this time, and I was actually, looking at messages with my one friend, and I told him that I gave it a 4 out of 5 star rating. I was like, yeah, the critics were wrong about this. Like, I can't believe they didn't like it. But then cut forward to like 6 months later, and my little brother, I'll never forget, was watching it with my family, and I was watching some of it just out of context, and I was like, this is not good. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to preserve that experience of the first viewing. So I'm just going to be like, yep, no, I liked The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It has its flaws, but I liked it. However, when the next Tom Holland Spider-Man came out, what was it, Far From Home, Away From Home? I don't know, whatever. The one that a lot of people love, I don't. Anyways, when that one came out, I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to revisit the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Cool. So I rewatched the first Amazing Spider-Man, and I liked it. Didn't like it as much as the other times that I saw it, but then I revisited Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I was like, yikes, this is terrible. This is bad. This is bad. Like, especially Electro, what they did with his character, whoo, yeah, that's not good. The score by Hans Zimmer, I'm a fan of Hans Zimmer, but wow, this is just, no. The only thing that really kind of makes things kind of work is the romance between Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield. That's about it. The cinematography is a nightmare. Like, it is not good at all. Yeah, I really do not like this movie at all. And that's why it's my number 3. Next up, my number 2, we have Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen. That's right. Before I really got into like art house films and, slower paced movies, I watched Transformers, the first 3, quite a bunch as a young teenager. And I hadn't seen Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen for a long time. I would say at least 6+ years. But I decided to revisit them. I believe it was last year. Yeah, last year when I got the 5-movie set. Or, no, 6-movie set, because they also came with Bumblebee. So I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to revisit every single one. And Revenge of the Fallen, I really didn't like it this time around. I really didn't. Like, I was like, okay, now I understand why so many people don't like it. Like, it is terrible. The humor, a lot of times it just looks like the Transformers, the action scenes, it looks like they're just fornicating with each other. It's just like, it's a nightmare, man. Like, there were a lot of times where I was like, just do a wide angle shot. Why is this so up close? We can't tell what's going on. Are they fornicating or are they fighting? I don't know. You don't know. We all don't know what's going on. So that being said, I mean, if Revenge of the Fallen is on, I guess I would watch it. But like, this definitely is a movie that you can watch it and you say, yep, this was the 2008 writer's strike. Definitely can see that. Not a good movie in the slightest, and that's why it's my number 2. Next up, my number 1. The movie that I used to love, meaning I saw it many, many times, but now hate. Number 1 is Fireproof. That's right. You probably haven't heard of this movie. It is the same director as Courageous, Alex Kendrick, and this was yet another movie that I revisited in preparation for ranking Alex Kendrick's movies. And I have to say, I found Fireproof to be so deep and so meaningful as like a 13, 14-year-old. But rewatching it last year, let me just say this. I went on like a rant on Letterboxd. I really did not like this movie. I think that it is so preachy. It is a movie that it's, again, similar to Courageous, but even more so. It's preaching to the choir, and that is it. If you are buying with what it's selling, then by all means, you're going to love this movie. I know I did years ago, but just now I just look at it and I say to myself, yo, this script is terrible. The themes, the messages, the way it's shot, the heavy-handedness of it all, it's not a good movie in the slightest. That being said, if you like it, I can respect that because I can definitely see why some individuals would like this because I myself was one of those individuals, so I get it. But just now, I'm really not a fan of this movie in the slightest, and that's why it's my number 1. But guys, that's my list. Let me know your top 10 movies that you used to love, but now hate. Let me know in the comment section down below, guys. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.